Perfect. All right. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome, my friend. Well, everyone, welcome back to the Storybox podcast. Today, my friends, I'm delighted to welcome Mike Kinney. Now, guess what? Mike shouldn't be alive today. When his truck slammed into a telephone pole and burst into flames, a 17-year-old became pinned in the driver's seat. Moments before the vehicle was consumed by fire, Mike was pulled from the burning wreckage of the twisted metal as his body burned. And he's had to deal with a number of recovery things that are involved with being in a wreckage like that. You're doing some incredible things. I believe you're a musician as well, and incredible things. It's an amazing story. I encourage people to go and get a copy of his brand new book. It's called Out of the Fire, and it's available on Amazon. I'll make sure everyone knows where to get it. Link will be up for everyone to go and find it. But Mike, man, can I welcome you so much to the Storybox podcast today?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here, man. My very first question for you, this is a question that I love starting off all my conversations with, which is you've been through like a lot of this crazy ordeal and experiences in life, being brushed up with near death. And I'm curious now at the age you are, so this happened when you were 17, the age you are now, what does success look like for you?
Oh man. I mean, the accident was 20 years ago. So, success today looks like helping anyone that's caught in their own burning truck, helping them find hope, find meaning in the middle of it, and purpose coming out of it.
When did you realize that was success for you?
Well, it took a long time because it was a long journey of recovery. It didn't happen in the hospital. It didn't happen in the first couple of years or few years, several years. It took a decade and really over the last 20. I think I figured out in 2018 after I had some pretty difficult things happen in my life in 2017, and coming out of that into 2018, I shared my story with some guys on a church retreat, and coming out of that, it was like the title of my talk was Designed for God's Purpose. And I think God has a sense of humor because that's something I had wrestled with my whole life. And it's like, why did I make it out of this? Why doesn't everybody make it out of their burning truck? And I don't know if there's a good answer to that question, but it's something I wrestled with. And 2018, I shared my story, and that's where I had this vision of myself kneeling down next to my friend who pulled me out of this burning truck. And it was like, felt like that's why you're here. You're here because you're supposed to go help people that are lost and broken and hurting and jaded and all these things. You're supposed to share your story and try to give people hope.
I really do believe that God has a massive sense of humor. I mean, if God didn't have a sense of humor, then we probably wouldn't have one either, because he created us. So I think that there is a massive crossover there, but God's sense of humor is a lot better than ours at the best of times. So, and it's very interesting how you mentioned your God's purpose for your life. What have you, aside from helping people get out of their own burning trucks, and I would ask you to explain what that actually means in the reality of life, but what do you believe what is your God-given purpose?
Coming out of the accident, my purpose is to be today. My purpose is to be a father and a husband. It's to just use the time that I have. Every moment that we have, every conversation, every interaction we have, to try to use that to share God's goodness, and to share hope with others. And, I think it's definitely developed over the years it's meant something different. But today, my purpose is to really two things: to remind people that you're never too broken to be used by God, and you are created for a purpose that's uniquely your own. So no matter what you've been through, what you're going through, God can use that to potentially change someone's life forever. It's a real thing. That's part of my story. It's like he can use you and your situation, what you've been through, to radically change somebody's life.
Absolutely, man. And I think your story is a powerful one. The fact that you are still alive today. And I also say as well, before we journey into your story and what actually happened that day, I also say when it comes down to purpose, we need to start distinguishing between I am versus I do. Who you are is fundamentally more important than what you do in life. What you do is still important, but if you don't take who you are into what you do, you're going to be a lot more miserable, because then you're going to be chasing this false sense of meaning and purpose and reality that doesn't satisfy, that doesn't really give you that level of true grounding and understanding of the world and life. And once you do achieve those things that the world tells you that you should achieve, then you just feel stuck. You're like, what's next? So I think having that first understanding of this is who I am, this is who God made me to be in the first place, this is my story. And it's powerful because God gave us all a story, and it's a unique one, as you talk about in your book, no doubt. And the fact that you are still here, I think, shows fundamentally that God is real. But we will get to that. I promise. I'm probably talking too much here, but I wanted to ask you, you're 17 years old and you're in a truck. What happened, my friend?
Fell asleep at the wheel and went, my friend was driving in front of me, saw me swerve off the road in his rearview mirror, and went through a hollow tree, and that kind of put me back towards the road and went into a telephone pole going about 55 miles an hour, and was driving a 1987 Ford truck, and it had one of the long hoods on it, and everything crushed back onto my legs. So that long hood was just completely crumpled, and I was wedged underneath the dashboard. So I was stuck. I had a brain injury, so I was out. And my friend came back and saw that the truck was on fire.
And was it your friend that saved you?
It was, yes. It was. He pulled on me for 5 or 6 minutes and then couldn't get me out. I was kind of in a ditch, and so he didn't have a ton of leverage to pull on me. The flames were moving pretty quickly through this cloth interior. So he finally realized I had my seatbelt on. He burned himself getting the seatbelt off of me. And then he kept pulling on me, and it had been for probably 5 or so minutes before this car is coming down this dark country road. And so he leaves me hanging from the truck. I had crushed this side of my face, my left eye socket, and my eye was hanging out. And he leaves me hanging from the truck, runs back to the road to try to stop this guy. And the car just drives by him, and he's like, "You got to be kidding me." So he runs back towards the truck. Well, this guy had just tried to get out of the way of all the wreckage and came running through the woods and was like, "You got to get away from the truck. It's going to blow up." And we actually have video footage of the flames from when the fire truck got to the scene of the accident. So you can see this is like 15-foot flames, and they're yelling back and forth. And finally he comes over and helps, and they pull me out.
And you were awake. You were conscious.
I was alive, but I was unconscious, and I couldn't. My friend couldn't get smoke out of his lungs for days after the accident. I didn't have any smoke. I didn't inhale any smoke, which means I wasn't breathing for, I don't know how long, at least 5 minutes.
That is crazy. So how long after that process of you being pulled from the wreckage, how long after that were you still unconscious during that whole ordeal?
I think my friend realized as they got closer to being able to pull me out that I started gurgling and making some weird noises, he said. And so he knew I was alive. He was going to pull me out one way, either way. But yes, that's when he realized that I was still alive.
And was most of your body burned? What was the percentage of how much?
Yeah, I burned about 30% of my body. So I burned pretty much my entire right leg into my Achilles tendon. So it was down to the bone. And then my left leg, it burned my arm and my hands and my back. And so it was kind of all over the place. But, it could have been worse. And, I was fortunate to make it out.
Yeah. That is crazy. Was an ambulance called not long after that?
Yeah, ambulance was called. They actually called a chopper as soon as the officer saw me laying in the field. He said, "Call Bird." So I was lifeline to the local hospital here, and spent quite a bit of time there in the hospital.
And how long was the recovery process, man?
Oh man, the recovery process from the burns probably 2 to 3 years, and then even I always had to buy two sizes of shoes, like a 10 and 11, because my right foot was so big and swollen all the time. And I couldn't fight off infection in my right leg. So every time I got a new pair of shoes, no matter how big it would wear a hole in the side of my foot, and then I would get an infection. And so I was dealing with that for years and years after the accident. And even to this day, I have to be careful with it. But yeah, it's the brain injury took much longer. I was in cognitive rehab back in 2014, so this would have been 12 years after the accident, with several 8 and 10-year-olds, and graduated from this program. But it was helping me with the brain injury.
I want to get to more of the recovery in just a moment. Before I do that, I wanted to ask you the question. This may be a difficult one to answer, but we'll see how we go. How does going through a near-death experience for you prove that God is real?
When I was waking up and not coherent with this brain injury, but starting to understand what had happened, I think I told friends that I had fallen down a flight of stairs. And they're like, "No, you had a car accident." I couldn't tell them how many sides were on a triangle. I couldn't lift up my middle finger on command. So the brain injury was pretty bad. And when Matt started to explain what had happened to me, and you might be going there with future questions, but there's this moment that happened in the field with Matt and I, where he had been calling on Jesus' name. He's like, "I can't do this alone. I can't do this without you. We're stuck. Jesus, help me." And so once they get me out of the truck, the stranger that had kind of helped pull me out, he disappears. We don't know where he went. He left the scene of the accident. So it's just my friend Matt and I in this field. And he's got one hand on my chest, the other one lifted to the sky. And he's just praying, like, "Jesus, please, help me." And so in that moment, he says that out of the corner of his eye, he sees this figure walking towards him, and it's moving super calmly, not in any big hurry at all. And he describes him wearing a button-down shirt and carrying a black doctor's bag. And there's this moment where, Matt's he just knew. He's it was Jesus, knelt down across from me, lifted up my face, looked at me and said, "Matt, it's okay. Mike's going to be okay. You're going to be okay." And Matt's convinced to this day that God was healing me in the middle of that field in that moment. And so this story was amazing for me to hear. And it's never changed in 20 years. Matt's not a weird spiritual guy. He's a great guy. He's actually, I was his first save. He's an ER doctor now. But he has never changed his story. That was what he experienced. And, so to answer your question, months after, so call it 3 or 4 months after the accident, I went to the junkyard because I had to see this truck. And I think I was still wondering, okay, Lord, Matt says you were there, but were you really there? Is this real? Are you real? And so we're looking at the wreckage. People are taking pictures. I can't, looking at it I can't believe I made it out of this thing. And as I peeked into the window, right in the middle of the steering wheel that should have severed my leg, right in the middle of this steering wheel, 2 pieces of metal had bonded together in the shape of a cross in the center of the steering wheel. And for me, that was a moment that I've got a picture of it, and I'll never forget it, because it was that was Jesus saying, "No, I was here. I was with you." So I don't know if that answers your question, but Jesus is real.
That really does answer my question. It really does. And I couldn't help but reflect on that side of your story, and then also relate to very much of my own, being in different circumstances, me wanting to end my story and my life, and driving at full speed towards a telegraph pole at the end of a stretch of road and taking my hands off the wheel, and then seeing like the car was veering off towards where the pole was, but then seeing the steering wheel that was veering turn away from the pole back onto the road, not even feeling my foot come off the accelerator and onto the brake, and then come into a complete stop all of a sudden, not far away from where the pole is. I say that was God, because I didn't want to walk away from that wreckage that day. And there's no other explanation aside from me watching that steering wheel turn and then not even feeling my foot come off the accelerator and onto the brake. So it's like, I do believe, and there's many other examples of God being there in my life, like several near-death experiences, not just that one, that was my selfish choice, but several others that occurred in my life, like being a baby and having salmonella food poisoning, and then the doctors not being able to rehydrate my body or put a cannula in for that to happen. And then they had to take me into surgery, but there's complications with going into surgery when you're 2 years old. And then having my whole church pray that I wouldn't have to go into surgery. And then the doctors go over my body again. They find a tiny, tiny vein the size of a mustard seed in between my toes. Like, that's God again.
Yeah.
So it's not a coincidence, man. And when people say to me, how do you know that God is real? I point them to these kinds of stories. And I say to them, look, God is real because of this. And he intervenes in some people's life because he's not done with those people yet. And I know there are people out there that, I'm probably talking a little bit longer here, but I want you to speak to this as well. There may be people out there that haven't been saved and they've gone on into eternity. But the amazing thing is their story and how they live their life lives on. It continues to live on. So for them to say that God isn't real because God didn't intervene in this person's life is null and void, because God is still using that person's story. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, thank you for sharing your story too with me, because I'm still in this period of not figuring out, but almost like accepting the mission and maybe the message that I feel like God has given me to carry forward. And I've never personally dealt with wanting to end my life, but I've known people that have, and one of the people that's two of the people that are in the book, that was their story. And this gal heard my story. I gave shared my testimony with my friend Matt in front of my high school before I graduated. And this gal heard my story and she wrote me a note, and I've got it framed because it meant so much to me. But her note had said, she had recently went through a life-threatening moment where she tried to end her life. And she said my story had reminded her that God had saved her for a reason. And she felt like God had saved me and sent me to save her. And she just wanted to thank me and say, may God always be with you. And this note, she couldn't have known how much this note meant to me over the last 20 years. So much so that I reached out to her about a year ago and I said, hey, can I use your name in the book, in this story? And I sent her a picture of the note that she gave me. And she said she didn't even remember writing it. She doesn't even remember writing that note, but she said, I always remembered your story. And so she gave me the go ahead. And so that's the reason I shared that story is because I don't want to get too far off track here, but I feel like the conversation's going here for a reason. in 2017 on my birthday and the day of my cousin's wedding, my cousin's brother, about my age, he decided to end his life. And it was just the lowest point for my family. You know, it was like, this kind of stuff doesn't happen in my family. I mean, that's kind of like what was our attitude. This doesn't happen. And Kyle was this amazing guy. He served in Afghanistan, and, you know, he had some trouble just feeling like he was like, am I truly loved? Am I accepted? He dealt with some difficult things. Like, he was adopted, but he had a family that loved him. There was all these things going on. And, you know, it was after that happened that when I was asked to give that talk, Designed for God's Purpose, it was like, I don't think I could have really seen it at the time, but it was like, this is part of my purpose, is for people that are have a terminal illness, for example. That's one of the gals in the book that's a close family friend was diagnosed with Huntington's chorea. It's like ALS, it's like Lou Gehrig's, and you're not going to survive. And I just got to talk with her parents a couple of days ago, and they said that the suicide rate among people that have ALS or Huntington's chorea is off the charts. And so we were just talking through, what was the difference for Jamie? Why did she had such a strong faith even after she was given this illness? In fact, once she was given the diagnosis, it was like that calmed her spirit, because she had wrestled with bipolar and all. They were trying to medicate her for all these things that wasn't the issue. The issue was she had Huntington's. And so it was like that moment she realized, I have a purpose, and she lived her life to the very end. You know, she stayed alive because she wanted to give hope to other people. And so I'm so excited for people to hear her story. If you haven't seen the documentary, it's Why She Smiles. So I want to share that on the podcast. Just an amazing human being that was given a death sentence, and she lived her life for the glory of God to the very final moment. And so anyhow, sorry, I'm off track, but I appreciate you sharing your story, because there's people that need to know that it's not the end. You know, hang on, don't give up. God's got a plan for your life.
No, man, I really do honor you for sharing her story, because it is people's stories like that can be used to help another person, because you never know what someone's going through, like on the other end. So it is more powerful to share the story than keep it away. And I think it's admirable, and it's also inspirational at the same time to listen to someone that could have gone two ways, and she chose the right way. You know, she could have succumbed to the reality of the circumstances she was faced with, and she could have crumbled and said, no, I'm not going to share. I'm not going to do anything. But she chose the opposite. She chose the best path forward, which was, I'm going to be a blessing and I'm going to use it. And now you're still sharing her story. So that's the beauty of it, man. And that's how impactful God can be in people's lives. He gives us this story. He gives us these experiences, like yours, Mike, like mine, like this girl's, and so many others. And who are we to hide it away? We should amplify it. We should share it. And that's what this show is all about. So I appreciate you actually doing it, man. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I couldn't have expected it would go that direction. And, you know, I just want to honor the life of, my friend, Jamie, and also the life of my cousin, Kyle. You know, I mean, life is not easy. And I hope, like, I never would want to water down someone's situation to say I understand all of what somebody's going through. I certainly don't, but I do know that, and I believe that the same power that raised the Lord from the dead. I know everybody listening may not have that same belief system, but man, the same power that raised Christ from the dead lives in the people that are willing to step out and trust him with their lives. And that's amazing. That's amazing that lives in us, that same power. And there's people around us, our family, our friends, they need hope. They need it. You can't get enough of it.
You can't. Hope is never truly gone. I don't believe that for a second. And I believe that it's through stories that we can provide hope for people. And so, and once again, man, thank you for sharing your story. I wanted to ask you about, I'm not going off any of these set questions that I've been sent. By the way, this is all me being curious and wanting to know and learn from your story.
Sure.
And unbox things you probably haven't been asked before. But what was involved with your recovery process? Because not a lot of people would know. So you've been burnt 30% of your body, you have a brain injury. Do you still live with that brain injury today?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I think I've recovered in a lot of ways. I've worked really hard over the last 20 years, but there's still things that are affected. My visual processing speed is pretty slow. So hand-eye coordination is not the greatest. I'm not the best golfer. And maybe I wasn't before the accident too, but
neither me, man. Don't worry.
But yeah, there's the thing that lingers more than anything would be, that I still have lasting scars, and I still have, my lower right leg can't fight off infection, so I've got to be careful with it. And so in those ways, that's impacted my life. But I mean, like I said, it could be so much worse than that.
And you're now married with kids, is that right?
Married with kids. I threw three kiddos and 2 boys and a girl, and we're so blessed. The Lord is amazing. I mean, the road I've traveled has been long, but it's like looking back at it now and writing this book and getting it all out on paper. I'm just blessed, so blessed.
Tell me about that process, man, of having this visual impairity that's going on with your brain. You got a delay that's happening, and you're writing a book. So writing a book is no easy thing to do, and you've got this thing that's going on with your brain. How did you make it all work?
I use Siri a lot. So, on my phone, I talk to text a lot, and I can type much faster than I can see what I'm typing. Let's put it like that. And back in 2014, when I was going through that cognitive rehab, there was a gal there just doing her job, but she kind of went the extra mile and asked me. I told her I had been missing handshakes, I was super embarrassed about that. And I said, this has been going on for a long time. What do you think? And she's like, well, tell me everything you see behind me. And I pointed out everything, and I'm like mentioning like the wall, and I'm trying to be obvious with it, and she's like, so she stands up. She's like, so you didn't see this and this and this, and everything like on the floor level I was missing. And so she's like, you should probably go get that checked out. And sure enough, I went to an eye doctor, and they said, yeah, the entire lower half of your vision is dark. So everything above equilibrium is light, everything below is dark, and you're just not seeing things. And so I went through some rehab and was able to regain my vision, which of course that's helped with my visual processing, but that was part of the battle. And that was 12 years after my accident. So, I mean, long time after the accident, but it's been a journey. The other way that I'm thinking back to that it was really difficult for me was, as somebody who loves to play music, I've never been somebody that reads sheet music, but even reading like chord charts where you have like the chords C, G, or whatever over some words. I couldn't even stick with that. So I was trying to do like the Nashville number system or a color coded chart just so I could be able to go fast enough with the song and be able to play the chords. So it's come up in different ways, the challenges, but God's given me ways to work through it.
It's amazing, man. My 2 final questions for you. Where can people get a copy of your book? Where do you want them to get a copy of your book first and foremost?
So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, it's all available for pre-order and releases on October the 18th.
It's called Out of the Fire. What's the subtitle, Mike?
Subtitle, How an Angel and Stranger Intervened to Save a Life. And can I tell you about one of the other strangers real quick?
Please do.
Pete Townshend of The Who heard about my accident through Bob and Tom radio. And Bob and Tom were talking about guitar picks for Kinney. People were sending guitar picks with little notes of encouragement, and they're coming in from all over the nation. So they call Pete Townshend and the Who's team over in London, and they say, "Would you send a guitar pick?" He's like, "You know what? I'm going to send a guitar," and I brought it because I just think it's amazing. This is a prized possession. So it says, "To Mike, this is the Phoenix, Pete," and this has been a inspiration to me over the years. So I wanted to share that if anyone listening has access to Pete, I still to this day, it's always been a dream of mine to meet him in person, to say thank you. He was kind of the stranger in my life because of course he's a celebrity, but I didn't know who he was when the accident happened. So apparently he's a big deal, some kind of rock legend. But for me, it was what he wrote on the guitar. And then he wrote me a note on letterhead saying that he'd be praying for me and some other really kind things. And it was the inspiration behind my recovery.
You never know, man. Hopefully he hears this conversation and hopefully he sees your book. Yeah. So that would be awesome. I completely understand how you would feel in that moment. This is my final question for you. This is my all-time favorite question. I love asking all my guests at the very end. It is a hypothetical one, but I want you to imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends and your family have decided to put together a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done. Don't ask me how in the world they got it all. We'll call it magic for the sake of argument. They've been able to get it and show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
I would want them to say that Mike reached for the stars and just wasn't afraid to go all in with whatever he did, and to share his faith and live his life. But of course, all of it. I mean, the most important things are like that he was a good father, and that his kids love him, and he's got grandkids that love him, and he's a good husband, and his wife of 75 years, loves him, and But I hope that as they remember me, I hope it would be Mike was not afraid to go for it, and to share his story with as many people that would listen. And that's a good question.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time today, your wisdom, your advice, your story. I honor it. I know my audience is going to love it and honor it too. But thank you so much for joining me today on the Storybox podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. And I can't, I've got to tell you before you hang up, I have to show you one thing. And it's in the making. It has been a 20-year journey. God gave me a dream about this capo. It's called the Kinney capo for now. It's patented. It's non-production, but it allows you to push down the individual strings above each of the strings on a fretboard. Your listeners may not be musicians, but the reason I'm sharing this is this is for me became the Phoenix, because what it did is it took away the limitations of the guitar. It made it more like a piano. And that's what I wrestled with for so long, is I felt limited, and God gave me this dream. And so whatever you're facing, just know that the Lord can use something as silly and small as a capo to change your life and to give you hope. And so thank you, Jay.